Hello everyone. Please just let me know if you can hear me. Just add a comment here in the chat if you can hear me clearly, please. Is the audio okay? So let's start our live. Hello guys. Welcome to our first live on LinkedIn. My name is Luciana Barros. I'm marketing manager at STAUFEN.Brasil. This is a very, very special edition. Today we are holding in our LinkedIn page a very nice conversation with the world-known Lean coach, consultant, and Lean guru, Michael Ballé. First of all, I would like to invite you to send your questions as comments below in the chat box. This live conversation with Ballé is going to be in English. To moderate this conversation, I would like to introduce the Managing Director of Staufen in Brazil, Dario Espinola. Dario, welcome.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Luciana. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. It's a very special honor to us for hosting this, let's say, special edition of as our first live with this very nice guy and Lean guru, Michael Ballé. I had the honor to meet him 10 years ago in Tianjin, China. So back when I was working there. It was quite a, let's say, a very special moment and a pleasure for meeting him. So from there, I've been in touch for several topics, discussing Lean in general around the world. We had Michael Ballé in Brazil in our Best Practice Day in 2017, right? And this is a very interesting initiative that he's launching, and we are supporting him for this topic or this initiative called Ask Me Anything About Lean. Michael is a Lean guru, consultant, Lean coach, author of several books. Some of them I got here: The Lean Manager, The Gold Mine, The Lean Strategy. That one I have on my Kindle. One of the latest, Lead with Respect. So that one is a Portuguese version. The Lean Strategy as well. So as you can see, Michael is a knowledgeable and very knowledgeable Lean person in the world. I would say he's one of the best coaches I have ever met. So Michael, please join us for this session. Ask me anything about Lean. So whereas you are the guy, right? And first of all, I would like you. So I have introduced you. Please feel free to say more words about yourself. But you are a known guy. But tell me, what are your motivations for launching this initiative, for bringing to people, answering questions through video answers, right? We've been so used to texts and articles, where this is the way many people are used today for publishing, sharing knowledge, sharing questions, answering questions. What are your motivations for doing that?
Well, can you hear me? Is it okay?
Yes.
Well, as you know, I'm a great believer that the way to do Lean is first to apply Lean to yourself. And for me, writing is easy, video is hard, but it's a different way to reach people. I think I'm also with a young British guy, Ben Albia, also trying a podcast, which also is different and hard. So really, I think that people like to listen or read, or it's different media. And I was curious about how do you reach people through a different medium. It's very challenging because you don't say things the same way as when you write.
Right.
And so I think it's been very interesting. And I was also very curious to hear what kind of questions people would have. Lean is strange because it's an old idea and it's still a new idea. It's an old idea. I remember my dad coming back with TPS back when I was still in high school. So he discovered it in the mid 70s, and he was really into it in the 80s, believe it or not. So it was an old idea for Toyota them already, and it was a new idea for him. And now we're all these years later, and it's an even older idea, but it's still a new idea for a lot of people. So I think doing it through video puts a different light on it, and I just wanted to explore it.
I do agree with you. I think this can be a way for touching people, right? Rather than cold text. So you can somehow bring
and also, we've been looking for, we've known each other for so long. We've been looking for an opportunity of working together, and thank you for the opportunity. I think this is great. It's great fun. I also really enjoyed the idea that this is centered in Brazil, because I'm imagining a map of the world as if what you put in the center is Brazil.
Nice.
And what would the map of the world look like? And I think this is fantastic, actually. So I love that idea as well.
A different perspective.
Yeah, it's a different perspective. It's a very different perspective.
All right. So I think we are going to be pretty flexible. So we've got already a few questions that came up. Many others I think people will pop them up in the chat box.
Sure.
But let's start with a few questions, and then let's say we've got 30 to 45 minutes, or if we have a lot of fun here, we can go over 1 hour. Let us see. Let me start with a interesting question here coming from a Luis Rochot, operations director of the bus company Marco Polo. He's actually asking two first questions, so they are combined. How can we identify that a organization is thinking according to Lean philosophy? That first question. And then, which is the best way to keep up the Lean thinking in an organization?
Well, I have simple answers to this. I'm not saying you're going to like them, but they're very simple answers to it. One of the things about Lean is that we don't learn ourselves into doing Lean. We act ourselves in terms of thinking Lean. So there is a very narrow and simple door to Lean, which is Kanban. Do you use Kanban on do you use Kanban in everyday life, in the way you organize things? Because what is really surprising is when you do, you don't expect it when you don't. But when you do, you find qualitatively different answers to your question. So Kanban is really sell one, make one, and put in the Kanban and pool the value rather than push the value. This is the door to Lean. So I find it quite funny because really Lean literature is full of books explaining how you can do Lean without practicing Kanban. But practical Lean was born in Toyota out of Kanban before they had the ideas and they didn't know how to do it. When they started practicing Kanban, they learned how to do it. And I think this is still true. So how do you know you're doing Lean? Well, have you gone through the door? Here's the door. It's narrow. The room behind it is huge. It's a room for improvement. And what is so hard to believe is that once you practice Kanban, you will find different answers. I know it's hard to believe. People think, well, no, it's just we solve problems. Well, actually, Kanban reveals different problems and highlights different answers.
Right. So what you're saying is that not only doing Kanban for the sake of doing Kanban, but doing Kanban for the sake of learning, of identifying opportunities for improvement. Is that right?
No, what Kanban is just cards, it's just a tool.
A tool.
What Kanban reveals is what is the next thing I need to do. So of course, Kanban doesn't lie. You can't reschedule. You can't do anything. You have the card. It's like you're in a restaurant, and if they write the card in the restaurant and they give it to you, and you're in the kitchen and you have the card, you have to do the dish. That's it. And of course, you're busy doing something else. Of course, there are many reasons. So what Kanban really does is not schedule the work, but reveal the problems you have to deliver the work when it's needed. So you always have a reason to prepare a dish ahead of time or to do something else. This will be revealed by Kanban. Now, what is interesting is that when you start solving these problems, in order to get closer to Kanban, you start learning a lot more about your operations than you thought. The Kanban asks very specific questions. For instance, the first question it will ask is quality questions, because imagine you receive the Kanban and you deliver something that is not quite right. You have to redo it. So then you're late on the Kanban. So you ask, why did I have to redo it? And you go backwards. So Kanban is really a wonderful tool to reveal the problems that you have in your operations. When you look at these problems, particularly if you have then the other tools such as Jidoka, which is you have a chain of help. Chain of help. The chain of help is an expression from Gilberto Kozaka, who is my Brazilian sensei, who told me this when I was in Brazil. So if you have a chain of help, then you will start looking into the immediate problems, not the problems that you remember, but those that you have now, and it all builds up.
Right. Excellent. Yeah, interesting. A warm-up question. I have a very interesting question coming up here from Joel.
There's a second part of the question, which is interesting, because once you do Kaizen, once you do Kanban, how do you know you're staying with Lean? Well, Kaizen. And so there are many different kinds of Kaizen, but a lot of what you do with solving problems is error correction at first. But how fun is that? Okay, you correct errors and you understand why you make the errors and you learn. But the next step is to do Kaizen, is to find things to improve spontaneously. You're not correcting an error. You see something, you want to do it better, or you want to do it different. It's like moving from writing to video. You try things, you raise the bar. So this is how you know you're staying in Lean. Are you raising the bar? Not by putting more pressure on people, but raising the bar. Is it clear that in all your operations, from sales to engineering to production to supply chain, that you and I as advisors, can you answer the question, where are you raising the bar? What are you trying to do better right now? So this is how you know you're sustaining Lean.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, raising the bar, setting challenging goals, challenging targets for promoting continuous improvement, right? Nice. Yeah. I have an interesting question here. So there are a lot of questions coming related to Industry 4.0, digitalization, etc. Let us leave that one for later. But Joelson Fonseca is asking, may I ask what your thoughts about applying Lean tools versus implementing Lean philosophy, mainly centered on people as I see it? So this Lean tools and Lean philosophy, how do you see that?
Do you guys practice meditation, Zen meditation in Brazil? Do you heard of it?
Yes, Luciana does that, by the way.
Luciana does that. I'm sure she does. Of course she does. Of course she does. There's a Zen saying that before you practice Zen, you see the mountain as a mountain, yeah?
Right.
Then you study Zen and you meditate and you do all the things, and you no longer see the mountain as a mountain. The mountain is a mind vision, is a philosophy, something. Then you understand Zen, and you again see the mountain as a mountain. So to me, the tools in Lean are very much this. It's at first you discover Lean, it's only about tools. The tools to make you more efficient. Then you practice Lean, and then you get into the philosophy of it, which is Lean. It's all philosophy. There are principles, not about tools. Then you understand Lean, and it's all about the tools. So the big difference is that when you first practice Lean with the tools, it's about applying things to someone. So you would go into a production line. Brazil still has production. In France, we don't have much of it, but You still have production. You go in production now, and you do a cycle time analysis to balance the line. You apply it to them. So it's a tool to improve their efficiency, and it works so far. But then people resist it. Then you understand the tool, and rather than apply it to them, you give them the tool. You teach them, guys, if you were to balance the line, how would you do it? And they'll come up with a different solution, but it's their solution and it's robust. And they've grown, they've understand their line and their work better. So the tools could be, it's a question of attitude. All the Lean tools could be something that you apply to others, or that is something that you apply to involve others, that you involve them in. It's the same tool. It's a complete different attitude. The second attitude, of course, is you put the people first. You can say, what would you do with that tool? What does that tool teach you? Which is the idea in Lean of Jishuken, self-study. So you teach the tool to people so they self-study. And you never know what they're going to discover. Now, what's really interesting with the second way of looking at the tools is the first way of looking at tools. We've all done that. And remember, we've been in China. So, God, we've all done it. Yes, remember, you go into the line and you fix it. And you have these results. And yes, you have them. But then they're very hard to maintain. And then people ask you in the Lean spirit, now you've done this result, how do you do it again and get the next step? And then it gets very hard. So you move on to somewhere else. But if you've taught people to self-study, then they get the results, they're interested, they're curious, then they apply it again, and they get more result and so forth. And then you get really into what the Lean spirit is, which is what we were talking about, is that you can raise the bar because people are self-studying, and the more they study, the more they discover. So the key thing here is to understand that the tools are study tools. They're not doing something to, that would be Taylorism, doing something to people. That's Taylorism. So at first it's easy to confuse because they look really the same. We're measuring stuff and whatever, but the attitude is very different.
Mm-hmm. So, by the way, just back to that you were mentioning, so using the tools for learning, and prior to the prior question, the previous question, you were mentioning about Kanban as a way of revealing problems or getting momentum of people. Okay, now I know what to do. Now I know what problem to work on. For who is starting a Lean journey? So what kind of tool? What tool do you think, or in your opinion, is the best to start? Which is simple, can be simple, and at the same way can bring you the right attitude of learning Lean. What tool? Or few tools?
Honestly, I don't have a set answer. I don't think there's a sequence. It depends where people are. So really, at first, the real hard conversation at start I have with CEOs is asking two things. First, do you want to win, or do you just want to stay in the game? What is it? Second, are you ready to change your mind, or are you looking for alibi activities to stay the same? So what's your answer? And you see immediately, so people say, okay, yes, we want to win, and then we're ready to change our minds. Okay, let's do something practical. Let's fix a problem. Let's fix a customer problem. So when you started looking at customer problems, sometimes different tools come to mind very spontaneously, and that's an entry point. Personally, I try to go to Kanban very quickly. But as an example, this new series we're doing, I'm having a discussion about Kanban with Luciana, which is how to set up the Kanban. But it's not the first question. First, we're trying to understand what we're doing and so forth. We have questions about what is the quality, what we're doing, how are we doing it, what will be this. But very quickly, let's have a Kanban, because I know the Kanbans will reveal the problems. But although I try to get to Kanban very quickly, it really depends on how people do it. Some people get to Kanban quickly. Some people, it took me 7 years to get to Kanban. My father was trying to get me to understand Kanban for 7 years before I actually, when he retired and we started consulting together, it was 2 to 3 years before I actually learned. I was trying, like every other people, that I was trying to do lean without Kanban. So I was doing a lot of shop floor and a lot of problem solving and a lot of quick response and all these techniques that you hear. Yeah. And my father said, sure, but it will never hold. At some point, you've got to do Kanban. So I got tired of this in about 3 years, where 2 to 3 years, I finally learned Kanban. I said, now I understand. So if it took me 7 years, I understand sometimes it takes people a few months. So
aha moment, right? And the same for Heijunka, for when people really and deeply understand Heijunka, as it is, right? There is a huge aha moment, right?
there's okay, I get it. But so I would really, I would start with customers, look at which customer issues we can solve, and see what's the immediate tool that comes to mind, and that's the entry point. And then when we understand what we're doing as quickly as possible, I will go to Kanban. Okay. It doesn't have to be. The difficulty with Kanban is everybody imagines Kanban in the production environment with cards that come back and things like that. Yeah. No, Kanban is really sell one, make one, use one, order one. So you can be flexible about what kind of Kanban you have. The point is that you're not having a backlog in which you look into and you decide, I'll do this one now. For instance, right now we're having questions come in. So we have many sources of questions. Some people send me the questions directly. Some people send them to you. Some people send them to Luciana. So their immediate instinct is to create a backlog of these questions. And when we record the questions, think, okay, which will I do next, and so forth. So we're choosing which question, why, because it's easier, because it's sooner, whatever. So the idea of Kanban is that you stop doing this, you ask somebody to schedule them, so that all I do is, so we are going to something that when I send you a video, you send me the next question, and that will be a Kanban. So we can then see if it works. So it doesn't have to be a Kanban like in the factory. Right. It's really a tool that once you deliver one thing, you can start working on the next one.
And putting the customer in the center, right? So
towards the customer. You put the customer in the center. And again, the Kanban is the way to put the customer in the center, because if the customer is not buying, clearly we need to understand why.
What's the point of doing something, right?
Exactly.
Now, nice. There is a very interesting, let's say, deep question here coming from Alexandre Amani, the head of quality at Suzano. Ballé, besides the evolution that we are experiencing now, with the new dynamics of the companies in a VUCA world, what VUCA is volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. I have my things here. And the new perspective as ambidextrous leadership, whatever ambidextrous is, I hope you know. What's your opinion about the synergy and evolution of the Agile methodology together with Lean methodology? What are the Agile tools complementary to this strategy that we are already implementing in our Lean journey? So it's putting things here on Agile, as the word now is becoming digital, fast, speedy. So what's this relation? Agile tools, Agile complementary tools, and Lean tools implementing on a Lean journey. Complex question.
Yeah, I work with some software guys, and they come from Agile, so there's all these discussions all the time. What is Agile? What is Lean? And to me, Agile is really just another way of organizing work. It's not a way of accelerating learning. To me, what makes Lean unique is that Lean is about accelerating learning. So if you're just looking at techniques to organize work, you can see the Agile technique, particularly with Scrum, small batch delivery, small team, burn down charts, and so forth. And then no planning, whatever. And you can try to overlap them with Kanban and some of the things that Lean does and so forth. But hey, these are just ways to organize work. What Lean does is what Agile, I don't think, does much. There is some refactoring in Agile. Well, they do some of it, but is the Jidoka, is the add-on, is the focus on quality and the focus on learning and stop and learn. So I think that we're looking at two very different beasts. We're looking at two very different things. The first thing with Agile is, where's the product? And the first thing about Lean, it's all about the product. It's what is the fit to customers? Where is the product? How do we know the product satisfies the customer? And people tell me it's there in Agile. I've never seen it myself. It's all about organizing how the teams work. And the second thing is, where's the learning? So yes, there are commonalities, but I think that it's more interesting to focus on the differences because it's richer. So Agile is a great way to start and organize work. As I said earlier, organizing work is not what Lean does. Lean organizes learning, which is a different thing. So yes, there's a lot of overlap. Many of the techniques evolved at the same time, more or less. Whether they originated in one or the other, whatever. People tell the story differently, and I've heard many different stories. We were discussing it recently on LinkedIn with Al Shalloway, and I remember what Jeff Sutherland said about the beginnings of Agile and Lean, whatever. But it's all about organizing work. The real question is, how do we organize learning?
One thing that I learned, if I may, one thing, Michael, that I learned a little bit about Agile is regarding Agile organization. And one thing that is interesting is they say a Agile organization is giving more autonomy for people, for everyone. So they are getting more empowered, more autonomy for doing things the way they do. And I think there's a certain synergy in this point with Lean, because at the end of the day, we want leadership, right?
It's a very complex question because there's a difference between independence and autonomy.
Right.
What autonomy means in Lean terms is that the cell has a Kanban, so they have a direct order. They know what they have to do next all the time. And the cell can order its own material with the Kanban. So they're really like a kitchen. They know what dish they have to do next. And then they know how to order it. But however, if you think in terms of a restaurant, would you want the people in the kitchen to reinvent the recipe all the time? Probably not, particularly if you have a good recipe. You want people to follow what we call standardized work. We want people to follow the recipe. Secondly, would you want the people in the kitchen to worry about everything? Worry about their HR, worry about their supplies, worry about how to maintain the oven? Probably not. You want them to focus on cooking. So many people interpret autonomy as you just let the team just do everything. And that's one way of working. Is craftsmanship is not very efficient, and it's not particularly nice to the team because even in development, I mean, the guys I know who code, they just want to code, right? They don't want to sort of all of this nonsense. The reason they come to code is to be able to code, which is what is autonomy in Lean. The second thing, you don't want them to reinvent the recipe all the time. You want them to have initiatives about the recipe. You want them to solve problems, but you don't want them to reinvent the autonomy all the time. So autonomy in Lean is really, to be specific, the autonomy in solving problems.
Right.
It's not the autonomy in handling everything all the time.
So, for example, is autonomy within the standardized work of solving problems?
Yeah,
we have a framework, right?
No, it's not within. You start with the standards of work. Standards of work is like a flag on a hill, and you try to do it that way. And of course, all sorts of things happen. You have to solve these problems, and the problems will teach you about the standardized work. Oh, this is why we do this way. Oh, and you can also have ideas to improve the standardized work, and there's no problem. You can raise the bar. You can have ideas. You're not locked into the standardized work. But again, like in a kitchen, you have a recipe. And people say, yeah, but software, it's a lot more creative. Well, I don't know much more creative than writing a book. That's completely creative. And still, even as a novelist or as an author, you start with some standardized work. Yeah. So there's always some point where you're reusing stuff or you know stuff, because if not, it's like we were a blank slate. So you start there.
Right. Excellent. Yeah. Very good. Very good point. As we are now talking about software and these digital things, let us start. Many questions coming related to this digital digitalization. And here, a question from Veronica Gonçalves, who is the operational excellence leader at Gerdau company. In practice, lean implementation is aligned with a new mindset and new behaviors. How can we change our mindset when we think about robotization? That's a question number one. Question number two, how to reduce the trade-off between lean and Industry 4.0 digitalization regarding standardization?
Okay, these are two very different questions. But let's go back to basics. What is the problem you're trying to solve? So robotization, of course we automate. Again, we automate people to make more autonomous. What is fascinating when you look at automation is, do you put the robot first or the person first? So when you look at a lean production cell, you have a lot of machines, but the operator is still leading. Actually, the operator is now leading multi-processes. So there's two ways of looking at it. Either the operator is the last part you couldn't be able to automate. So I know a lot of robots that simply can't work because the moment something is different, that you need a person. So then you put the person as a slave to the machine, because it's the last part you didn't know how to automate, because you can't automate flexibility or judgment. Either you look at it the other way, the person makes the part, but every process that is dangerous, heavy, complicated, the machine does it, but the person is leading. So there's no, it's not a question of how much you automate. You try to automate everything you can, but there's always a point where only the person will have judgment, only the person can learn, only person knows if it's good for the customer or not, only the person understands what they're doing. So you can have a cell where you have one person with lots of machines around them, but the person is still leading, because the person, only the human can relate to a human notion of quality. The robot will never know. So this is what at the time I really minded Six Sigma. Again, there's Six Sigma in terms of self-study, understand what you do. But the way it was applied is like you treat people like robots, like you want to reduce variation. You don't want that. You want a person to have a human judgment about what is quality. Because if not, the moment you get into real quality things for customers, like the shine on the door, the exact position of an alignment, the thing that makes a product feel, or even if you're into art, there's some notion of wabi-sabi, sometimes an imperfection is perfection. It's a human feeling. However, in order to do this, well, we have tools. I have an espresso, I have a coffee machine to make coffee. It stops me from having to make the coffee or to go to a coffee. Of course we have tools. So really, the automation. It's not a percentage of automation. It's not how much is what kind of automation with what motivation. So clearly, I will automate everything that makes it easier for the person to remain leading. Clearly, I will fight every automation that creates more work for the person, because the person is like the last flexible part in the process. Does that make sense? Your mic is off, Dario.
Thank you. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And there is a complementary question from a guy, Wagner Agostinho, from Mercedes. And how does this lean practitioner, need to adapt to this new, let's say, robotization, Industry 4.0, this new situation?
Well, back to the 4. Back my vision on 4.0 is very stark. It's very harsh. All right, I'm not going to get a lot of friends on here, but
I know.
okay, you should see my desk. My desk is a complete mess because
man,
I'm
what
a
is it?
craftsman. You know, I'm a craftsman. Like any craftsman, is like you go into any garage. Of course, not in Brazil, because Brazil is the cleanest place on earth, right? But
No.
you go to any garage, and the guy's a craftsman. Maybe he does beautiful work, but chances are that his organization is a complete mess. We all know craftsmen like this, right? We all know craftsmen that they do beautiful pieces of work, but when you look at where they work, you think, ah. So it's also very inefficient. There's a lot of rework and so forth. So now there are two ways. There's only two ways that I know to organize the craftsman place. There's a Soviet style and there's a lean style. Soviet style is we micro control everything in the environment. We plan it, hyper plan it, over plan it. We completely log the process. We control everything Soviet style. And the person just has to do a little bit of work. So this is how we feel about many computer systems. A great computer system is one that gives you control, where you can do what you wanted to do with it. Great software. But increasingly with websites now, I don't know if you guys have any deal with commercial websites. They control everything. You have to go through so many screens, and you can't go. And the moment you get something, you can't go back because you lose everything. You know, they control you, Soviet style.
And we are hooked to that. And we are hooked to that.
Yeah.
Eventually.
You're locked. You can't do anything. You can't get out. They control it, Soviet style. So this brings everybody down. We hate this. And we do things badly. And we fight it. And we resist it because we're humans. We don't want to be controlled by the system. This is, to me, what 4.0 is. Is a Soviet. The alternative is lean. Lean is the other way to clean the work environment in a way that involves people so that they stay in control of their environment. So to me, it's a very stark choice. You have Soviet-style control of everything, and the person is in there like a little robot. Or you have lean style, which the person controls their whole environment and learns to structure it in the way that best works for them.
And let me put a little bit more, some ingredients to this fire. For companies or some environments which are creating a lot of data, massive data, let's say process industry, or even software, let's say consumer goods, sales process, whatsoever. So data related. And then we are learning that this data analytics, how can we identify some trends? Because you can identify a tiny problem, tiny deviation, but how about some trends in terms of
this is the modern con. Data is not information.
Right.
Data in context is information. Information is not knowledge. Information plus understanding is knowledge. Knowledge is not success. Knowledge, and call it respect, call it compassion. Knowledge and a human feeling is right action, is success. So we have data coming out of our ears. I've even started a startup, and with some guys, we wanted to deal with data. But the question is not data. The question is first the context, understand that we need a human. So when you start to look at really good data analysts, they're really smart humans. The data doesn't tell you anything in itself until you have somebody to put it in the right context to come up with the right information. Now, this is very difficult. Now, the same thing is information without understanding. And this is something where I feel old and I worry, because This is with social media, with Google. I've had yesterday the discussion with my kids. Everywhere I'm seeing dumbing down. And they were upset. They said, what do you mean dumbing down? How can we be dumber than you were? Well, because now you don't have to do the understanding part. You don't have to have your own theories. Whenever you have a question, you click and ask. We used to go to church, yeah, and ask God. Sometimes God would answer. Now we don't need to do this. We just ask Mr. Google, and Mr. Google has an answer. But this answer, Mr. Google tells you, ask your doctor what it means to understand something as opposed to Google it. The answer Mr. Google gives you is absolutely useless because it has no understanding in it.
And in many cases, wrong answers.
I'm not sure about that, actually, Dario. I do trust Mr. Google. I certainly trust Wikipedia. I don't think they're wrong answers. I think they're answers that we haven't had the discipline to acquire the understanding. So we just read formally. We understand the words. We don't understand what they mean. So we interpreted them completely wrongly because we interpret them badly. I remember something. I did my PhD in sociology, and a lot of it was about Max Weber. So I studied a lot of Max Weber, and it's incomprehensible because you're reading German translated into English or French and Spanish, and none of the translations fit, and you have no idea what he meant in the first place. And I had one of these, sometimes you have fights on social media, and there was somebody quoting Max. They didn't know that I had studied Max Weber deeply. And they disparaged my argument and saying, as Max Weber says, blah, 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 and it was straight out of Wikipedia. And it was funny because in that particular case, they were saying the opposite of what Max Weber said, but they never realized it. So I think, again, the problem is not, yes, we have data everywhere. Absolutely, that's true. But the data won't interpret itself. We still need to structure it and have very clever people to understand the context. Now, there's something called Conway's law, I think, that we also structure the data in the way that our organizations are structured, in the way that our natural communication links are structured. So in many cases, the data just reflects us. Mm-hmm. It doesn't tell us anything.
And do you think, and there is a question from the same guy, Wagner, do you think a lean practitioner are better prepared to deal with data, to convert data to information, and then to knowledge, than, let's say, an ordinary person? In this sense.
Ideal, yes, but it depends which kind of lean you do. If it's the kind of lean that it's about creating a culture of problem solvers, yes, absolutely. Because if you have people who solve problems all the time, they understand instinctively the need to put data in context of a hypothesis and to look deeper into it and do this. If it's the kind of lean that we see in many companies, which is just apply the tools to get short-term gains, it won't make any difference because we haven't got this culture of problem solving. But yeah, definitely in places where you work with the culture of problem solving, and I work with some digital companies that already had a lot of data, you can see their relationship to data absolutely change. Because people are smart, people are human. When they understand what they're looking for, and particularly this thing about context, at first they think there is some answer in the data. But sometimes there is, but it's very, very rare. And usually when there is an answer in the data, it's so obvious you didn't need the data for it.
Right.
What the data is very good at is when you are knowledgeable and you have hunches, you can test your hunches. But you started with hunches, you started with ideas, you started with the theory. So you have a theory about, I want to do this. And this goes to strategic. I was having the discussion recently, but we were looking at a company to acquire. A CEO I know was looking at a company to acquire. And the hunch and say, how does the data play out? How do we test this assumption, this hunch? And there it's all about context. And of course, there the data is very important. Mm-hmm. But looking for answers in data, this is like throwing bones on the ground or going to the oracle or looking into a crystal ball. There are no answers in the data in itself.
Or looking to something blindly, right? Completely, yes. You don't know what you're looking for.
Yes, there are no answers in there. Or even Wikipedia, there are no answers in there. There, however, when you have it there, for instance, here's a fun example. I don't know if you guys are on social media a lot, but I tend to post things on LinkedIn, and it attracts people who behave like trolls. They say, "No, you're wrong," blah 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 blah, and they keep correcting you. And the first instinct you have is to answer, saying, "Oh yes, I'm right," da da da. And I use it. Say, when I want to answer something, I don't answer. I check it. I wanted to answer this and think, is this correct? So I thank them, because then I go and I look into data. Then I go into Google or Wikipedia and I check what I was about to answer. And of course, when I check, what happens is that I am not incorrect. But it's not true either. It's more, and then you learn something, because again, it's not black white. It's more sophisticated. You can look at it. It depends. So then you deepen your understanding. So I find social media trolls very, very useful, and I thank them for it, because every time you want to respond, say, okay, is what you say true? Sometimes I respond anyway, but it's fine.
All right. So
the data, really, you need to understand the hypothesis you're testing for the data to make sense.
With the purpose of solving problem.
Yes.
Right. It's already 11:45 in Brazil, 4:45 in France. I think I'm going with back to lean topics. Not on. Let us leave these digital things for aside for a moment, and maybe two more questions. And there are many questions. All the other questions, maybe we can use them in our Kanban for.
Yeah, that's perfect. Exactly. A huge backlog.
Exactly. So here a question coming from Emerson Lincoln, the lead manager of Novo Nordisk. He's asking,
"Hey, hi, Emerson."
Yeah, you know him, right? Yeah. What's the importance of efficient strategic deployment or policy deployment for the organization in these times of crisis? And how much can this strategic development reinforce, or if done in a wrong way, damage the company's cultural characteristic, the core, let's say, the company's core business?
Again, it depends it's the same answer all the time. It depends what you mean by deployment, what kind of attitude. So, do you remember when we were in China, one of the big Chinese thinkers is Sun Tzu, Art of War and Strategy. And Sun Tzu distinguishes between short time and long time. So short time, you need to attack now. You need to do something now. Because if you don't do it now, the train is past, you've missed the opportunity, and you can lose the battle, you can lose whatever. So some things, short time, we need to do now. And clearly, the impact of society, as we know it right now, is that we need to do things now. The short time is shorter and shorter and shorter. But then there's a long time. The long time is the building the competencies, building the opportunities. Because when you're in the short time, you can only use the tools you have in front of you. You can only use the opportunities you know. What you need to build is opportunities. And that is long time. Learning is long time, 10,000 hours, 60,000 hours, long time. So the trick is you need to build on the long time as well. So when we're talking strategy deployment is, again, what Lean does with the Kaizen is link the short time Kaizen with the long time of building capabilities. So the real question of strategic deployment is, what are the long time capabilities we need to build? And Toyota has given a spectacular example, certainly with the hybrid and so forth, so where they're doing it with robots. Why would they do trumpet playing robots? Well, they're building long-time capabilities to increase their short-time opportunities, to increase their range of response. So when you look at the strategy, our strategy tends to be, it looks strategic, but it's not. Because it's all about short-time response. What is really interesting in the strategy is the resource strategy, the building capability strategy that people have. What capabilities are they investing in
So your mic is on mute. What happened? You're on mute. Muted. Gustavo?
Happened completely on its own. Okay, so
Okay.
the bugs on the internet. I was
You're
saying
back.
something. There's something that that the interface really didn't like, so they muted me. So I think, I don't know if it might make sense, but really the answer is, when we look at the strategic deployment, we look at the short time deployment, we look at the long time problems, and these long times are capability building, and how much do we invest in these capability building activities.
So
Because they give us a range of reactions to opportunities.
for who are more interested in this topic, can find more deep knowledge on your book. You are co-author of the Lean Strategy. So
Yep.
this strategic capabilities on a Lean perspective.
Yep.
So can read this book. It's great insights, right? Can find great insights there. Right. One last question, Michael. Here coming from Alex Etevaldo, who works he's a quality director of Marco Polo. He's asking, you as a coach, as a lean coach, you have seen many companies implementing or going through lean journey. What are the biggest issues those companies face? What are the common biggest issues?
That's an interesting one, because I work with CEOs. So the lean journey for the company is really the learning journey of the CEO. And the issues they have are very different, because it depends on the person. Some things they get right away and that's easy for them, and some things they struggle with for years and it's hard for them. So it's never the same, because it depends on the person. I think the biggest issue that I would see in the lean world, not me personally because I'm not involved with that, but in the lean world, is people treating lean as a program. So the CEO is very involved, or the division head is very involved, and she delegates it to somebody. Say, you build me a lean program, and we're going to do lean to everybody. We're going to take every process and do lean to every process or every team. And they don't realize that they mean well, but this is Taylorism. This is not lean. So how does lean work? When you're a CEO, and I can think of many CEOs, there are some things you understand and some things you don't understand, like in any business, because the moment the business is big, it's complex. And I was listening to a masterclass for the captain of the International Space Station. He was talking about the same thing. The amount of things you need to know to survive out there in space is enormous. How do you know all these things? Well, so what happens is the canoe problem. If you picture a canoe, you have some guys paddling one way, some guys paddling the other way, a lot of guys with the paddle up in the air waiting to see which way it goes. And if you're the boss and you don't understand the issue, sometimes you give reason to the guys one way, sometimes to the others, and nobody understands what they're doing, and the canoe doesn't move. So you have to understand the issue to always put in the same direction, so people understand which way you want to move. Because if not, they don't understand your decisions. So you need to look into every issue. Now, where the key thing in lean is very useful is that with lean, you don't need to understand everything about the area. You need to understand the critical issues. I need to go and look into how the data lake is organized. I don't need to understand everything about the data lake. I need to understand a few critical issues. I need to go to customer service and see how it's organized. I don't need to understand everything about customer service. I need to understand the critical issues. So as a CEO, I need to go into every area. I don't need to understand everything about the area, but I need to understand enough of the critical issues to give a direction to the people in the area.
And those issues, I would say, those issues which are preventing, let's say,
a flow of value.
Flow value, the main value stream of the company.
And there are typical problems that come back again and again. So once you've got it, when you understand the typical problem in that area and that area, you got it. And you say to guys, well, okay, now here's the problem. How would you solve it? I don't have the answer. You can solve it, but you give them the direction. So this would be, to me, the biggest thing that I see in Lean is that even with a very committed CEO or division manager, they still don't see it's that they have to learn this with them. And when you go to Japan, it's funny because people say Lean is easier in Japan, and say, no, it's not easier. You go into the Toyota environment of suppliers, and then the CEO explains the Kanban himself. The CEO of the supplier is there, and he explains the Kanban. You go outside of the Toyota environment, and they say, oh, yeah, we have some Kaizen activities going on, but I'm not really involved. But I'm very committed. It's not a support. They believe in it, so they support people. They give them resources. It's not a problem. They just don't. It's like the canoe. They don't understand the issues because they don't understand themselves. So it brings us back, and I think it's a great conclusion to my early question, which is, do you want to win or do you want to stay in the game? And I think one of the surprises I've had with seeing all these companies is how many executives just want to stay in the game. They have no intention of winning. Because of the second question, are you ready to change your mind, or are you just defending a status quo? And again, what you find most executives thinking, say, if I defend the status quo hard enough, I will stay in the game. So I'm fine. And the sad thing is, when you look at it from the outside, they're not fine. They take all these decisions and so forth, and then they're disappointed because then they get moved or fired or have to change company. They're not fine in the end because all they're doing is staying in the game, not trying to win, and they're not changing anything. They're just defending the status quo. So I think this is the thing in the end. The biggest thing for a program is, do we consider Lean as strategic? Because it's a different way of thinking. Because it's a way to accelerate learning throughout the company, particularly I'd say in a VUCA world, we need to learn faster at every level. So is Lean strategic, or is it just one more program that we have? And yes, we are committed to it, like we have all these other programs, but that would be Taylorism.
Mm-hmm. And maybe, and if it is only a program, maybe don't expect a cultural change in the company, right?
There's no culture change for a program. Again, it's status quo. We're just doing more activities. And we know these programs, Dario, we've known so many of them. You always have short-term results as you motivate people for 2 years. Then on the third year, you say, okay, we have all these short-term results, but where are the bottom line results? Oh, I don't see any bottom line results. And finance get involved. See, do you see the cost of your programs? We don't see the returns on investment and so forth. By the fourth year, everybody's fighting for their life, and somebody has an idea for the new program. So then the fifth year, you have the new program. And it's the new program, but different consultant, different names, but it's the same thing. Yep.
And people down the shop floor, hey, again?
Again. Oh, no,
right.
Not again. Yeah, exactly.
Right. All right. Michael, great. I'm very happy for working with you in this initiative. Ask me anything about Lean with Michael Ballé.
It's fun.
That's great. Let us, as you said, started in Brazil, but this is something to spread all over the world, right? Let us bring this new way of sharing knowledge from writing to video.
Brazil is at the center of the map. And
right.
Let's look at the world that way and see where we get to.
Let's do that, yeah. Thank you so much. I'm wondering when we can meet up again, either in Paris, to drink a Kir Royal by the Sena River and then chat about Lean, or in Brazil. Remember a few years ago, I think 6-7 years ago?
That was fantastic.
Fantastic, yeah. Or either in Brazil, back to have you again in our Best Practice Day or whatsoever. I think now with technology, we can do this more often.
I think this is great.
Thanks a lot. Some final words for there are many questions. We are going to put them on our backlog for.
Beautiful. So hi everybody, and I hope that what I say makes sense. And I'm really curious to hear what you think. And thank you Dario. Thank you for the opportunity. Let's do this again.
Thank you so much. And also thanks to Marcus Chow. I wrote him. I don't know if he's online. Because he was the guy who put us together, right?
Oh, Marcus, they did something fantastic. Marcus and Jolie, They just did a YouTube video explaining the lean strategy in Chinese.
Oh,
and
nice.
I feel so flattered. I mean, this is incredible. You see, I don't understand. I don't know what they're saying, but you see the whole lean strategy explained in Chinese. And I'd like also to thank Luciana. I mean, she's put a lot of work in this, and she's really good at what she does. So thank you, Luciana.
Good. Thank you. Then Luciana, she's listening and she's saying, "Oh, thank you." She's just beside me right now. All right. Thank you, Michael. Have a good day. Enjoy your summer. As you can see, we are still in a little winter in São Paulo state, but I know you're going to enjoy the summer. Today's Wednesday, 5 p.m. for you. Enjoy it and the rest
Thank
of the
you.
week.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care.